feel free to write to your heart's content. Thanks. Like I mentioned earlier, we're a little constrained in space because they have activated their emergency operations center in preparation for what at least Minutecast says is going to be the flood of the century tonight. So, we have some committee and chair reports, as we always do, and I'm pleased to say that the repeater technical report and site chair report will be very brief because our technical chair and site chair, Mark, KF6WTN, is suffering through the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas tonight. So hopefully he'll bring some toys back. The repeaters are up and operating. The radio in my car died somehow this afternoon. I thought the repeaters were off the air. Somehow between 3 in the afternoon and 4 in the afternoon, they went from operational to don't operate. So Murphy arrived.
It was that lightning strike.
Taken care of tomorrow. Pardon?
It was probably that lightning strike.
Probably so. Although lightning never strikes in the People's Righteous Republic of Poway. Let's see. Membership chair. Our membership chair would like to make some comments about membership. Glenn, KJ6ZQH, for those who haven't met him before.
Okay. This is my first time standing up here since Alfreda helped Al a few months ago.
Hold the mic closer.
Okay. And that sound guy should be able to note that. Okay, so as of this afternoon, we have 248 members paid up, and I have 2 sheets here. One has about 40 people on it who have expired in the last few months. So that would bring us about 200. Their membership. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I'll be clear. Their membership has expired. So I have 2 lists with me. One is a short list of those people whose accounts or memberships have expired. I'll have it with me at the table. The other one is just a list of all the members. It's in call sign order, so you can look yourself up. And at any time, 24/7, you can get your status, your membership status on the website at palomararc.org. Also, you can renew your membership online via PayPal, the form online and the PayPal, and I don't have to handle cash that way. And you probably get your renewal up into the database quicker that way. And the one thing I'd like to get out is that if you are okay to get an email reminder that your dues are expiring, would you please send an email to membership at PARC or palomararc.org and either send it from the email that you want to receive your notice at, or include that in the body if it's a different one than you're sending from. And that's all I've got. Thank you, Charlie.
Any questions on membership? Anybody ready to sign a check over tonight? We have PayPal too. You can sign a check on PayPal, and I'm happy to help you out do that. We've got a couple of things to do with that survey you have in front of you. The board of directors, there should be plenty out there because I think I brought 50, so there may be, if there are any extras out there, there's one over there. So. The board of directors is going to start a series of business planning meetings. We've taken on a challenge to revitalize some of the things that we do here in the club. And key to what we're looking at is to make things that we do as relevant to the membership as we can. We'll be taking a series of surveys like that over the next 2 or 3 or 4 months. They're not statistically accurate. We're not trying to fit into a Gaussian curve or anything like that. But we are going to read the responses and phase those into our business planning meeting and pick a selected group of things that we're going to undertake as 2016 objectives for the club. That's wrapped around a little bit our business planning. As we talked about last year, we are now a designated nonprofit corporation. We anticipated, and it has occurred, that in line with that designation, some of our members took advantage of that at the close of the year for tax deduction purposes. And we received some significant tax donation money that we now have in our coffers. What was it, a $1.5 million that we got?
Two and a half.
2.5. Okay.
We're buying Palomar Mountain.
The point is that this is your club, and some have an opportunity to contribute. We hope to announce the projects that may be of interest so that those of you who think those are worthwhile objectives might consider that as a funding opportunity. In addition to that, by next month, we will have finalized our registration as a nonprofit. How many of you shop at Amazon? When we're done registering, you will have an opportunity, anytime you buy something at Amazon, you can designate contributing part of your purchase to the club. You get a tax donation out of it. It has no effect whatsoever on your purchase price. Amazon deducts 0.5% of your purchase and deposits it in the club's bank account. What does Amazon get out of it?
Free advertising.
They get a tax deduction at the end of the year. It's called business. Talk to Donald Trump. He'll explain it. So I hope that you consider that. We'll be announcing that, but I think I'm trying to tell you that we are looking at opportunities to strengthen the things that the club does. There are some interesting ideas that have been floated around. This has not been vetted by anyone, but 2 people have suggested that the Palomar Amateur Radio Club take advantage of our location on Palomar Mountain and implement a remote HF operating station so that members of the club who live in antenna-restricted areas can operate HF. Those are the kinds of things that move our hobby into the 21st century. And it's that kind of thinking that we're going to be looking at. So those sheets of paper are important to us. John.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to make some comments on operating. John is our director number 2. AC7GK.
Some people have a little trouble with that call sign. Just think of it this way. AC is electricity. GK is a geek, which I am. So AC7GK is the electric 7-land geek. Okay, or just call me GK. The answer to that originally. 2 things, if I could, real quick. quickly, and following on apropos what Glenn was talking about, we have a thing called PARC Notify. And PARC Notify is where notices of what's happening in PARC in a particular month will be sent out to you at your email address if you so choose. We won't take your address, your email address off of the sign-in thing. We protect it. What happens is if you hear about something on the first Wednesday of the month and it's going to happen later in the month, by the time you get there, you either let it slip your mind or you forgot the date or something like this. We'd be happy to send out a reminder of all the major club events a couple of days ahead of time to your email address. No spam. We protect those email addresses carefully. None of this one-a-day thought. Maybe 2 or 3 times a month. I don't see it going any more than that. If you'd like to participate, you go to the website, go to where it says Contact Us, and then you will find there a link to take you to PARC Notify. You merely put in your email address, and that's it. Now, on that same page, there's also a link where you can designate your email address to have scope sent to you as an email. And that's a plug for Michelle. We put out the most gorgeous edition of scope, so that's wonderful. So if you don't want to go to all that trouble and you are not protecting your email address with privacy, just scribble it on a paper with your name and hand it to any member of the board, and we'll make sure you get on that list so that whenever there's a big activity like the meeting, first Wednesday of the month, we'll just send out an email a couple days before. Any questions on that one? Second, to my mind, an active club is a club with a lot of chatter on their primary frequency. Love chatter. Now, from what I understand, there used to be a lot of chatter on the 7-3. And then a lot of folks got the habit of meeting there and then going elsewhere to continue their QSO so as not to clutter things. But pretty soon, they were all meeting elsewhere, and now the 7-3 is down again. So it's so quiet, we like to hear a lot of chatter. I spend a lot of time out there, and you catch all kinds of folks. They need a radio check for their new antenna or their location or a new piece of equipment they're doing, or they want to visit, or they're just traveling through and they say hello. It is so nice. So the club is asking you, if you have the chance, when you get in your car, turn on the 7-3 and at least listen. Even better if you'll give your call sign so somebody can go back and say hello. When you're going to be at home for a little while and have a radio nearby, even a handheld, just turn on the 7-3 and participate. The more chatter there is, the more excitement is generated for the club, right along the line with what Charlie was talking about. So if you want to, just remember a simple little thing. Say 7-3 on the 7-3. Write that in your forehead. Thanks. 7-3?
Thank you, John. And Kevin, KK6FRK, our director number 1, has an announcement to make on some of our outreach activities.
All right, thanks guys. KK6FRK here. Yeah, I'm also the person that is the Radio Scouting Committee Chair for the San Diego Imperial County Boy Scout Council. And so we're part of the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Committee. I want to thank those of you that helped out during Jamboree Over the Air, especially those that you showed up with soldering irons, because that's where we had the bottleneck back in October and Jamboree Over the Air. And I also want to acknowledge one of the scouts that's here tonight with his mom, Nico and Beverly, his mom. Okay, I got an email from his mom, and Nico has come to a couple of our events, the radio merit badge, I think electronics as well as programming. Those are the 3 merit badges that we focus on. Because I believe, and this is what I tell scouts, and I say, if you guys got an Android or an iPhone, you have a handheld, a software-defined handheld radio. And so that's the way we help them get prepared for life, is to teach them about radio programming and electronics. And this is where you guys come in. We're doing, the Radio Scouting Committee is going to a different area of the county, including San Diego Imperial County, once a quarter, doing the radio merit badge once a quarter, and then twice a year, a minimum of twice a year, we are facilitating the J. Goldberg style exam cram for the technician license. And that's one of the reasons why Nico is here. And then myself and Eric Johnson are going around and bootstrapping troops that want to get radioed up. We have Troop 474 in Black Mountain District, where the the leadership, the boys themselves voted to get radioed up. They went to Jay Goldberg class, all but one of the scout passed the test. And then what we do is, and with your help, we have provided them with a radio. I gave a presentation to Troop 722 in Vista. They meet at St. Francis Assisi. Gave a presentation to them on Monday. This is where I'm asking for your help. If there are any of you guys that live in the kind of Carlsbad, Vista area that want to become registered radio merit badge counselors, if you have a scouting background, please contact me. Because what it's going to take some help for these scouts to be prepared to take the exam. And as I explained to them, it's not just, you're not going to just take the exam and get HT at no cost. There's going to be Elmers available to you. And I explained the concept of Elmering to these scouts. And their parents appreciated that. So if you're interested in helping out locally, if you live locally, or if you live in other parts of town, please contact me. Just KK6 FRK at either AMSAT or ARRL. Okay? The next Radio Merit Badge course that we're doing is January 23rd in El Cajon. So if you have any contacts that live in El Cajon, please let me know. So then the next one after that, in the March timeframe, is going to be North County Coastal. Okay, probably at St. Francis Assisi. So you get the idea. We have ambitions and the kinds of things that we're going to do after they get their technician license. And the Radio Scouting Committee is going to sponsor some activity for Boy Scouts about once every 6 weeks, but it's hands-on. Okay? All right, so thanks a bunch.
Any questions on that?
We've got a couple of battery boxes up here for demo. These aren't available. Anything that you want to talk about that a little bit?
Actually, yeah. I'm Tony. I've been around here for a little bit, but I've been working for about a year on some. Oh, sorry.
I'll bring it to you.
I've been working on some low-cost, quick and easy e-com type boxes. These are not big boxes for a big radio. These are designed for HTs, charging cell phones. They're quick and easy. We can talk about it after the thing if you're interested. I actually have written some articles, and some of them are going to be published in a couple of different club newsletters. But they're just quick and easy. They're fairly inexpensive to do. They're using a 7 AGM battery, and they run for a while. They're great for charging cell phones and HT. But they're really light. They're good for QRP and for like e-com. You want to say something about them? No.
And the batteries over here?
Oh, batteries, those are for donations. So.
A couple of batteries if you want to build your own.
Yeah.
And what are those out of APC?
Yeah,
UPSs?
UPSs. So they're about 5 years old, but they've been tested. They run for, ran a test on them at 3 amps, and then the rating on them is how long they ran for at 3 amps. So.
Okay.
And they'd be good for like little projects, and
Cool.
if you wanted to build one of those, it'd work fine for it. So.
All right. And so that's just club donation?
Yeah, club donation.
All right. And the rest of the goodie table?
Tony, what's your call?
Yeah, hello there.
W6TNY.
I brought some stuff from my home. I've been trying to clean things out. For the artsy, I just figured that it was time to move on with some of these things that I haven't used. So for the artsy, craftsy kind of people, I've got a glass grinder and a whole bunch of glass working tools. It was one of those deals at a garage sale where you had to take a whole bunch of stuff, but you couldn't pick and choose. And I really didn't want or need that, but I wanted the other stuff that was there. But anyway, there's a couple of nice pieces of art glass here. This is 1/8 inch thick, and it would be an interesting thing if you want to get into that sort of thing. This is red glass. If you want to make yourself your own, I guess you'd call it your own crest for your family, But anyway, long story short, it's all a donation to the club. and I would prefer not to take any of it home with me. So, same story here, the drill sharpener. This is one of those Chicago Electric Harbor Freight kind of things. I much prefer the drill doctor. I think the drill doctor is a lot better thing, but this does the job. It gets the job done. So 2 broken CBs and 2 good CBs. So 2 for parts and 2 to use. And last but not least, a box of assorted goodies here. Some circuit breakers, some DC circuit breakers, and a bunch of AC circuit breakers. So it's pretty obvious what's over here. Solder, just like I said, got to pick and choose and be reasonable about club donation.
Is that a CB or AM radio?
Yeah, oh, the 2 radios here, I didn't, $60, that's a good price for an HW8. And $250 for an FT101, not a bad price, but anyway, all kinds of bits and pieces here. So again, we're trying to find homes for these things.
Just a comment on that HW8. I still have mine. It was the first radio I built. It was the radio that got me into ham radio. I was in command of a Navy ship at the time, and I used that radio with an inverted V coming from the halyards on the ship, and ran up and down the East Coast operating maritime marine. If you want a nice little radio, that is a great little piece of equipment. 2.5 watts, and today, when backed up with a stepper, it works DX just beautifully. So, well, you know that Mark is off in heaven playing at the electronics show. Michelle, W5NYV, she is the person responsible for the scope. And after this month's article, I suggest or I recommend a round of applause for what that scope looks like. If you look at it, it's pretty high quality. You met Kevin, and you met John, you met Glenn. Tom W0NI isn't here tonight, which is kind of odd because I talked with him, so it must be flooding down in La Jolla or wherever it is that he's located. Sandy, our secretary, over here, and Joe and I up front. So we're in. Who do we have as visitors tonight? Any visitors?
Right here.
Well, okay.
My grandson Nick is an Eagle Scout in the general category, JK4 ODQ.
Congratulations. I saw a hand over here. Gotta raise your hands again. I lost track.
I'm Don, KK6, Whiskey Delta Sierra, new technician as of August.
Congratulations.
Way in the back.
I'm Tom with no call sign yet, brand new to him.
Welcome to the hobby. There are worse things to get involved with, I can assure you.
Women.
We have a lady and her son. Can we hear who you are?
I'm Nico.
Nico.
What troop are you from?
651.
651. Well, welcome to the club, Nico. With a name like that, I know one of these days we're going to hear hola, hola. And those of you who play DX know what that's about. It's a good thing to be. So I'll hand over here.
Actually, I've been around a little bit. I'm Tony W6TNY.
Welcome, Tony. Anybody else? Right in the corner.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Drew, Kilo Golf 6, Victor Zulu Charlie, technician. My dad's been encouraging me that to general.
An excellent idea. Very good. Very good. It's a real pleasure to introduce Gene Spinelli. Those of you who play on the HF bands, I'm sure, have heard and enjoyed the concept of DX, contacts with stations far and away. We're going to hear tonight about a recent de-expedition that took place in October. Gene is one of the premier DX operators in the world. We are very fortunate that he's taken time from his vacation in sunny San Diego to come and tell us about what putting one of these things on is all about. You don't do this by the seat of your pants if you're going to pull it off. I think in the scope I mentioned that the Chesterfield shoal, although they call it an island, I think, is about 7,000 miles southwest from San Diego, between Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji. So it's not many 747s land out there. The Chinese haven't built the landing strip on the island yet, so that'll happen. So we're very pleased, and thank you, Gene, for telling us what the expedition is all about. A very successful one. How many worked Tango X-ray, 3 X-ray in October? Okay, this is what it was all about.
Ready?
All yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite, to Ron and Charlie. I'll give you a little bit about myself first. I am an old man of 70 years old, just turned 70 a few weeks ago. I've been licensed for about 40 years. I retired from IBM after 40 years and went to work for a Japanese company for 5 years and then quit and decided to go on the expeditions. My wife has graciously put up with me doing this stuff. She calls them his adventures. And her payback is every year we go to Europe to a large convention in Friedrichshafen when the ham radio event takes place. And she goes elsewhere in Europe, so she doesn't complain too much. My oldest daughter lives in New Zealand, so we get to New Zealand regularly, and they are here now. They came in for this beautiful sunny weather. They left the sun in Auckland and came to San Diego. And my other daughter lives in Del Mar, so we had a family reunion here. So in October, we decided earlier last year to do Chesterfield, and I'll show you a little bit about Chesterfield and what it's all about and the process to put one of these things together. So Chesterfield Island is owned by New Caledonia, which is a French possession in the Coral Sea. It's, as Charlie said, not far from Australia, not far from New Zealand, 3.5-hour flight from Auckland to New Caledonia. Probably people don't realize 25% of the world's nickel comes from New Caledonia, and I never knew that. But it's a very interesting country, lots of things to do, including cruise ships that come in all the time, sailing, diving, just a great place. We had a lot of fun there preparing to sail to Chesterfield. Okay, so if you understand anything about DXing, there are 340 DXCC entities on the ARRL DXCC list, and Chesterfield was number 21 most wanted, which means there was a great demand around the world for people to make a contact with Chesterfield. The last operation was in 2009, 2 guys, 28,000 Qs. They were on the island for a month. And we called it an island. It's actually a sandbar. And you'll see photographs of what this sandbar looked like. But most of their operation was on the low bands, 80 meters, 160 and 40, and they did no RTTY, so there was a demand for RTTY. And our goal was to give as many people a contact, all-time new one, first time they've ever worked Chesterfield, so that was one of our goals. Okay? Now, in landing on a lot of these reefs and islands in the Coral Sea and in the Pacific, you have to go through a quarantine. Now, we did not have to do that for this particular project, but we did for Campbell Island, ZL9, in 2012, where the government comes in and inspects everything. Your clothing, your boat, your equipment. They don't want you to bring any insects, rodents, seeds, anything that can contaminate their space. So fortunately, we had no quarantine requirements. Each of our team members had to have emergency medical insurance and evacuation insurance in case someone gets hurt. Because the only way to get you off one of these reefs is long-range helicopters, and it's very expensive. On Campbell Island, the fee was $50,000 if we needed to be evacuated. So you have to have at least $50,000, and most of us had $100,000, and of course your own medical insurance. We did not need landing permission, but we did need a radio license, and that took several months to get from the New Caledonia government. They gave us a permit for TX3X that was good for 2 weeks, so we had to pick a 2-week period within a 90-day period. And each of the operators are listed on the license, call sign and name, so it was very specific who was allowed to operate radios. No building of permanent structures. You know, as they say, leave nothing but footprints and take nothing but photographs. So you just trying to leave the island in a better condition. And we do that by cleaning the place up before we leave, because of all the jetsam and flotsam and junk that lands on the island. And of course, you're not allowed to annoy the wildlife. Okay, so Chesterfield Reef or Islands, New Caledonia, Australia. This is the north, I always get this confused, the northeast coast of Australia, Queensland, Brisbane. So we decided to sail from New Caledonia. Last year we sailed from Mackay, Australia, which was north of Brisbane, to get the Mellish Reef. This year we chose to sail from New Caledonia, and that was at the skipper's request. So this is what the thing looks like. The white is actually the sand. The blue in the different colors are reflections off the sea. So the actual landing area, probably 35 feet wide. And you'll see where we had set up our equipment. But these reefs are part of the Chesterfield group. Okay, so this gives you a little better shot of where we set up. This is an enclosed lagoon, so we sailed into it, dropped anchor, and just used that area. And that's actually where we set the thing up. These areas here are vegetation, short grass and shrubs, which was really odd because we didn't have any shrubs on Mellish Reef. Mellish Reef is only 300 miles from here. But this island had these, and it's really odd. You see the way they very, and the birds use those for nesting. And the odor, the smell was horrible. So we could not set up any radios, tents in that area. And of course, the other problem is insects and just stuff you don't want to be around. Okay, so that's what the reef looked like. And at high tide, this was water. At low tide, you could walk through it from each area. The team was made up of 12 men, mostly from California, Northern California, 2 guys from the LA area, 1 guy from Budapest, 1 guy from New York, 1 guy from Colorado, and the rest from California. And some of the guys on here you might know. They're very active contesters and DXers, DXpeditioners. I think Arnie N6HC gave this presentation in San Diego recently. Just let me know if you use the same slide deck, because I wrote the slide deck. So this is a quick run through of the guys. This is Mike. Mike WA60 is probably one of the best CW operators in the world. He runs at 40 to 45 words a minute contest style. He's a CW machine. He doesn't stop. It is simply unbelievable. That's me. Pista from Budapest. This is the third D expedition that I've been on with Pista and Les from New York. We did Campbell Island together, we did Mellish Reef together, and we did Chesterfield together. That's why my wife calls me crazy, because we've done 3 of these in 3 years. Okay, Tom ND2T is the president of the Northern California DX Foundation. And Alan now lives in Hawaii. He's from San Jose, but he lives in Hawaii. And David, some of you guys may know David. He's the ARRL section manager in Los Angeles. And this was Steve's first D expedition, so he was the newbie, and really good guy, hard worker. We needed young guys, because most of us are in our 60s and 70s, so we needed some strong guys, and Steve was one of the strong guys to do the heavy lifting. Dr. Arnie with his AED. Arnie kind of insisted, since the crowd was, highly mature, that we buy an AED, an automatic electronic defibrillator. So that's Arnie with his AED that we kept in one of the stations. And Kevin, K6TD. Kevin just announced a couple of days ago that he's now a director with the Northern California DX Foundation. He was elected to the board. Okay, so Ross, a lot of you all may know Ross. He spent an incredible amount of time with Northern California DX Foundation as the director. He was the president of the Northern California DX Club. And then Walt, N6XG, another former IBMer. We used a boat called the Evohe. This is our 3rd D expedition on the Evohe. It's out of Dunedin, New Zealand, on the South Island. It's owned by a fellow by the name of Stephen Kafka. Steve had bought this boat 34 years ago, moved his family on it, and spent the next, you name it, years sailing around the world. Raised his 3 children on this boat. Never sailed before in his life. And when he bought the boat, he said, I want to buy a boat. He bought it in Europe, and learned how to sail on this boat, and he's still sailing it today. So it's 25 meters in length, it's 82 feet about, and you can read this just as well as I can. Maximum speed of 10 knots. We never did hit 10 knots. We typically sail at about 6.5 to 8 knots, depending on the wind situation. That's Kafka. He's been 60 years old since I've known him, and I've known him 3 years now, so he keeps telling me he's 60. But I'll tell you, this guy is as spry and agile as you can't imagine, because he's all over the sails and all over the boat and does all the heavy lifting, but a really nice guy. He bought a home on the New Zealand equivalent of eBay. They call it Trade Me. He bought a 105-year-old house, sight unseen, and had it moved to a lot in Tauranga, New Zealand. It's up on a hill overlooking the ocean. The house had to be cut in half, moved up there and put on the foundation that he built. An amazing guy. He's got 10 kilowatts of solar on it now, just turned it on. Allison is a veteran of 2D expeditions. She was with us on Mellish Reef, and she was with us on Chesterfield, and she's a nurse. She lives in New Zealand half the time, half the year, and the other half in Australia with a daughter. This young fellow, Jake, is a student at the University of Otago in Dunedin, New Zealand, studying marine biology. Ray is a heavy equipment operator who loves to sail, and he comes with Steve when he has the time. And this is Tori's 2nd D expedition. She was with us on Campbell Island in 2012. And she owns a boat herself, and she's a pretty avid environmentalist. Okay, that's the crew. That's the guys in the red are the boat crew. The guys in the green are us. And this photograph was taken the night before we sailed in Noumea, New Caledonia. The equipment was consolidated in San Jose, California. We shipped everything from the United States shipment to San Jose, and you can see the guys here loading the boat. Everything, all the radio equipment was put in these big Pelican cases, watertight Pelican cases. That's what it looked like in the U-Haul. Then a bunch of us, like 3 of us, flew to New Zealand in the beginning of September, and we sourced everything else that we needed. If it was not radio gear, we bought it in New Zealand to save the shipping costs. And I pre-ordered the tents, I pre-ordered the generators. We used, and you'll see a photograph of it, 4 kilowatt generators. And we were running around for 4 days to what the equivalent of a Home Depot is. It's called Bunnings. And they also have an equivalent of Lowe's called Mitre 10. So we were bouncing back and forth between those two. We had used the internet to collect all the part numbers, stock numbers of what we wanted. So that was all laid out in documents. Now, you guys have all done field days. You can think of this as a field day that's going to last, 12, 14 days, and there's no Home Depot to go to, so you have to bring everything. And if you forget something, tough, you figure out how to do without it. So 3 of us went down and did all of that, loaded the boat, and it set sail on September 17th. Now, those of us who have been at sea, and I've spent a fair amount of my Navy time at sea, I was not going to go to sea on this thing. PISTA, HA5AO, took the boat from Auckland, New Zealand to Noumea, which was a 7-day sail. He did that because he said, at my age, I will never have the opportunity to sail in the Coral Sea again. And I want to do it again. And he did it. So he spent 3 days in his bunk, seasick. But, it is what it is. So we sailed, and when we got back to New Zealand, we donated most all of the equipment except the generators. We sold the generators to recover half of our investment, and we donated the rest of the equipment to the New Zealand Boy Scouts and Girl Scout group. And they got some really nice tents. It's just amazing tents that we bought. So that's what the equipment looked like when it arrived in New Zealand. We airshipped it. And we stored it at a company that's owned by my son-in-law. So he did all the storing and the receiving and the trucking. So it cost us nothing to store the stuff. This is all the antennas. This is coax. And the radios. That's my son-in-law loading the radios on this little truck. And that's PISTA and myself. The generators weighed 110 pounds each. So you have to be careful, these old guys trying to lift these heavy generators. That's my 8-year-old grandson. He thought he would come over to watch and we put him to work. And then he decided to sit on the generator. So, you can only get so much out of an 8-year-old. Everything that you take with you has to be hand-loaded on the boat. You don't have cranes, and we don't have, lots of dock workers loading the boat. So we truck everything over to the wharf, and then you have to walk everything out to the boat. Now, fortunately, this one wasn't too far away. We've had others where the boat was like in the next country, and it became very tiring, but this one worked pretty well. The skipper and the crew take the responsibility of putting everything on the boat, onto the boat, and into the lounge. This room, the salon as they call it, is where we took all of our meals, in fact. But during the loading process, it's a staging spot. The stuff comes onto the boat, goes into the lounge, and then they figure out where to store it on the boat based on its weight, because the skipper needs to balance everything. We pre-ordered 7 200-liter drums for a generator fuel. You fill them up to about 180 liters. You leave room for expansion. So if you figure it all out, if you're really good at math, we had about 1,200 liters of 91 octane petrol for our generators. No smoking back there. We only had one smoker anyway, and he was cut off. He couldn't smoke while he was on the boat. So we did all that loading here in Auckland, New Zealand. And the boat sailed to Noumea. This was a 7-day sail. Being the smart guy, I flew. It was 3.5 hours to fly versus 7 days on the boat. This was our trip to the airport. We stayed at a Best Western hotel in Noumea, La Paris. Truly a 3-star hotel, nothing spectacular, but incredibly clean. Basic hotel, but the staff was fantastic. They did everything. We had a question, they would answer it. If we needed something, they would get it. The manager was just a wonderful guy. So, church right down the street from the hotel. And we took most of our meals while near the hotel in a little cafe and drank probably all the beer they had on tap. We just really good beer in Noumea. So this is the boat. This is the Evohe at Port Moselle Marina. Port Moselle Marina was a 10-minute walk from the hotel. And the skipper tied up rather close to the wharf. And McDonald's there. How could you be without a McDonald's? And I learned that Arnie loves McDonald's.
Civilization.
Yeah, there you go. N6 HC loves McDonald's, so we have to take Arnie to McDonald's every once in a while. Get him his fix. Yeah, that's Arnie. That's Arnie with his buddy. I have another photograph of Arnie, but I'm not going to use it. It's kind of risque. We happened to arrive on a holiday weekend. And if you know anything about France, when there's a holiday, everything shuts down. And I mean everything. But there was a market going on at Port Moselle at the marina. This is the fish market. So we participated in, there's a coffee establishment there, and there's another bar. This was maybe a 2-minute walk from where the boat was moored, so we spent a lot of time in that bar and restaurant, taking meals there. We noticed from the McDonald's, we saw these American flags, and we didn't know what it was, so we walked over. It must have been 100 yards. And what it is, it's a memorial from the people of New Caledonia to the United States, thanking them for protecting them during World War II. And we first thought that this thing would be full of graffiti, and it's been up since 1992. There wasn't any graffiti on it. It was very respected, and they kept it in very good repair. But that's the plaque. It's in French on the top and English on the bottom. But it was pretty interesting to see. Okay, cruise ship terminal, right across from where we were docked. Came in on a holiday weekend, and there was nothing for the tourists to do. It was really sad. I would have been unhappy if I weren't there. Like most of the Pacific Islands, they're into carving, and you see this all over the island, where the totem poles of various meanings, and quite frankly, I don't understand all of this, but it was really interesting to see these in the park. Fish market every morning at the marina, so you can just walk over, get your fresh fish that was caught that morning, and just walk down the islands and pick out what you want. There was a flea market or a craft fair. This is N6 and W1SRD, Steve. This is all beer. This
Personal, huh?
was from the supermarket, and I think there were 10 cases of beer there, and it was really heavy, and I couldn't push it. I'm just too darn old to do that, so we enlisted Steve, and he was exhausted by the time he got to the boat. And this is the guys walking to the hotel, walking from the hotel to the boat the morning we left. So there we are, some of the guys sitting on behind the wheelhouse, which was a meeting area. And then we're getting ready to cast off, leaving Port Moselle. And David explaining to Ray how to set the sails. Or Ray telling David, mind your own business. I never did figure this out, but David is a pretty active sailor himself, and he was very interested in watching the whole routine. We had a station on board. Yeah, it had two Ford engines, 145 horsepower Ford engines that we would use when the wind wasn't adequate. So this Tori is the Z01 TOR. If you look it up in QRZ, you're not going to find her. She doesn't update QRZ, but it is a valid call because we've seen it in the New Zealand version of the FCC database. So this is David with his maritime mobile station. We could not use TX3X maritime mobile because the license was only valid for 14 days. And we were on the island for 12 days. So we decided not to try to use that license except when we were on the island. So that's, David was operating his N6HD maritime mobile. Mike practices high-speed CW 30 minutes every day. And I'm telling you, it's high speed. After a while, I went down to see what he was doing. It was beyond me. I mean, I couldn't make a sense of what it was doing. But he, every day, 30 minutes. Well, that's the skipper's navigation system. This was the path we took to come into the reef, into the lagoon, and drop anchor. And it was La Trois Islands du Molay or something. You know, I'm not a French guy, but it's the three anchorage islands. That's what this area was called. And that's the radar print from it. Again, that's where we were. Now, the boat has radar. In fact, it has two radar systems on it. But from the wheelhouse, the skipper can't see submerged coral. And if he hits one, he's in big trouble because he'll either go aground or break prop. So that's what these guys are doing up here. They're up on the mast. They're directing the skipper around that. Those are submerged coral heads, as we call them. And you can easily see them from the boat, but not from the wheelhouse. So they're telling the skipper, go this way, or go that way, and stay away from there. You don't want to run aground. That's the first look at the island, or reef, or whatever you want to call it. That's the log that we submitted to the ARRL. It's the ship's log. It shows where we dropped anchor. And this is just a little bit about the temperature. It was always 80 or higher. It was humid, as you might expect, hot sun, no shade. And what we expected were just normal trade winds of, 15 to 20 miles an hour. We were all surprised when the winds were actually 30 to 40 miles an hour. Constant, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And that caused us a fair amount of heartburn. The health hazards, of course, are sun and windburn, dehydration, and something called ciguatera, which I would expect no one here has ever heard of. What ciguatera is a toxin. It's ingested by fish that live in coral reefs, active coral reefs. If humans eat fish that was infected with this toxin, you come down with something called ciguatera. It's gastrointestinal, get the message, and neurological problems. In really, really severe cases, it will last for years, and you will never eat fish again. Most of the time, you'll have it for a few days or a week or a month, and you'll be okay. Now, I know a couple of guys on a previous expedition apparently didn't know this, and they ate the fish from a coral reef, and they were terribly ill. But we knew this. We've been warned a couple of years ago about this. But it's pretty interesting. Ciguatera. Okay, so everything that goes on the boat has to come off the boat. And that's what's happening here. The skipper and the first mate are overseeing everything going into the taxi, the Zodiac, or the inflatable boat, or the dinghy, call it whatever you want. And that's our transportation. We anchored about 500 meters offshore because of the coral heads and the other coral, underwater coral obstructions. And you can see this discoloration, that's coral. So you have to stay away from that. Wildlife on the island is birds, more birds, and hermit crabs. Now, being a kid who grew up in the Bronx, New York City, I had no idea what a hermit crab was. But after a few years, you learn. The shell doesn't belong to the crab. The crab inherits the shell. He finds the shell, moves into it, lives in the shell until it gets too big. Then it chucks the shell and goes and finds another one that it can fit into. If you've never learned that, I never knew that. I mean, to me, this was like, wow. But anyway, that's a hermit crab. And these are called masked boobies. Now, my wife had a lot of fun with that name. But these two birds sat in front of the CW tent for the whole time we were there. One would go out and bring a fish back. The other one would go out and bring a fish back. They were there for 12 days in front of the CW tent. It was stunning. That's one of them who was hanging around when the other went out to get some food. And that's a little better photo of the hermit crab. And there were giant sea turtles on the island that we saw regularly. The birds didn't have very much fear. They would come almost, if you put your hand out, not quite, but almost land on your hand. They would just flutter. So they weren't afraid of us. Now, as soon as we got on the island, you can see a couple of things in the sand here. There were bottles, wine bottles. And one of the bottles had a message in it. So we diligently opened it up, and it was dropped in the sea 18 months earlier from a cruise ship sailing from Noumea, New Caledonia to Sydney, Australia. And the people who dropped it put a note in here about who they were and what they were doing and what their email address is. So we sent them an email from the island. We had a satellite phone. Sent them an email, told them we found their bottle and their message, and we'll send them photographs when we get back to Noumea. And I had the bottle and the message at home. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. But just for, whoever thinks you're going to find a bottle with a message in it, So there we go, unloading the boat with the skipper and Ray handling the antennas and stuff. And I think that's Tori and Ray moving equipment. Just think about it. I mean, all of that stuff that we brought, it was 1,000 kilograms of equipment is 2,000 pounds. Plus what we bought in New Zealand, 500 pounds of generators, probably 400 pounds of tents, tools. All of that is being loaded into that Zodiac, back and forth, staged out on the beach. Everything was laid out. You would think you could get things over there in some sort of order, but in reality you can't. Because of the boat so small, you don't get the option to lay things in an order that you can get them out. So you get them in where the skipper wants them, and then you get them out as the skipper orders them out. That was our power company. At 4 kilowatt generators. We kept 3 of them running 7x24. Changed the oil every 100 hours. So we had a fairly large supply of motor oil, engine oil. And then you have to have receptacles to put the used oil in because you can't pour it in the sand. Tori would kill you. Tori went around and followed the only smoker, made sure he didn't throw his cigarette butts in the sand. So we would change the oil every 100 hours and put the oil in a container and take it back to the boat. The skipper would take it to New Zealand and dispose of it in a proper storage facility. The wind, because of the wind and because the sand depth is 3 feet. Think about it, 3 feet of sand. So if you put a stake in the sand, you can pull it out. Right? So it became pretty interesting staking the tents and the antennas, guy wires, guy ropes, because they would loosen up with the wind blowing against the tent. And, oops, go the other way. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Well, I think I have to hit a key on the keyboard. I confused it. Really confused it. It is confused. So what I'll do is this. Back to the old style. Okay. So what we did, because the sand was so deep and you couldn't get a good bite, and the stakes that came with the tents are only 12 inches long, throw those away. We brought 120 pieces of landscape timber, 1 inch square, 3 feet long, and 90 pieces of rebar that we bought at a concrete company in New Zealand where they cut them for us in 3 feet sections. So we had 90 pieces of 3 feet and 120 pieces of timber. And then you actually, you can see a stake. That's one of the landscaping stakes. That's a 50-pound sandbag. From our experience on Mellish Reef, the exact same situation. The sand is 3 feet deep before you hit a dead coral base. We figured we'd bring sandbags. We brought 100 sandbags, filled them up, and used them to secure these wooden stakes. And they actually worked real well. And the other thing we did was we filled up sandbags and buried them, wrapped cables around them, wrapped rope around them into a dead man arrangement with the sandbag buried. Didn't move an inch or a millimeter if you're Kiwi. But that worked out. So this is what the antenna systems look like. And we use the same sandbag situation and stakes and rebar to stake the antennas. This is a rotatable vertical, directional vertical, 2-element vertical, 10 through 20 meters. Then we also had directional verticals on 40, 30, and 20. And a couple of step IRs to round out the antennas. But again, sandbags and 1 meter rebar or timber. This is those areas on the picture that look green. This is what it was. This is where the shrubs, where the birds hang out, and the odor is bizarre. And we stuck one of the antennas up in that area.
It's obvious the odor doesn't affect the antennas.
I don't think so. No, other than the odor, it was okay. But, okay, and as you can see, most of the birds are ground nesting birds. The eggs are actually on the sand. Those that found themselves a space in the bushes would build a nest elevated. Now, those were the smart ones because the crabs would attack the eggs at night. The hermit crabs come out at night. You don't see them during the day, but at night they're all over the place. They attacked our plastic trash bags one night, so we had to go clean that up. So that was our break tent. We had 5 tents. 2 of them were operating tents. One of them was a break tent where we took our breaks and took our meals. And 2 of them were sleeping tents where we had cots. We had hoped to go back to the boat and use the boat bunks and showers, but the skipper deemed it was way too dangerous with the wind. And he would not, he told us flat out, I can't take his back and forth. It's too dangerous, don't want to risk somebody going over the side. So we stayed on the island, and we would go back to the boat once every 3 days and have a real sleep on a real bunk and take a shower. He had 3,000 liter water tank on the boat, and he had a water maker that makes 80 liters an hour. So we never had a problem with water, and we brought 450 liters of fresh water over to the island, and we bought in 10-liter jugs, 45 10-liter jugs. That's just a typical break area. This is the food was supplied by the skipper. We didn't have to worry about food. They brought it all. All we had to worry about was beer. Australians have a wonderful sense of humor, and they just raise all kinds of laughter about the Americans and their cold beer. And we have to have cold beer, and they always bring a refrigerator. We actually had an ice maker on this one, too. We brought an ice maker. They went nuts over that, because they don't use ice. And we left the ice maker on the boat, so we didn't use our island water to make ice. So the skipper's crew was making ice for us and carting it over.
I thought it was too dangerous to leave the boat.
Hey, what?
They were bringing beer every day, but they wouldn't let you go over the boat every day.
They brought over the meals in the morning, at noon, and at 6 p.m. The boat had to be back, because the sun goes down at about 6 p.m. And once it goes down, you can't see the coral heads, and they don't want to risk hitting a propeller on a coral head or going aground. So they came over 3 times a day to bring meals, and beer and ice. So this is this starts to give you a view of how much space we actually had. There's the 2 birds, the 2 masked boobies that never moved. And then you can see the wind, the effect of the wind on one of the step IRs. There they are, the watchbirds.
They're hired by the French government.
They must have been, the French hire everybody, so they all work for the government. So
either that or you covered up their nest.
I need to put them on a QSL card.
Yeah, somebody complained about that we didn't have any wildlife on the QSL. Did you read that on EHAM?
No.
Yeah, somebody complained about that this morning, that we didn't have any wildlife on the QSL card. The last thing I need. I read that at about 4 o'clock this morning. I'm thinking, what is this guy, crazy? But that's okay.
They're pretty birds.
They really are. They're beautiful birds.
Sure.
Yeah. But you only have so much space on the QSL card, and you have to take care of the clubs and the corporate sponsors.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is what a typical operating tent looked like. Each tent had 3 positions. There were 3 sideband and 3 CW positions, and in the break tent we had another position. So we had 7 stations. This is the most important tent. You can see the effect of the wind blowing on this tent, but it actually didn't blow over. And then you can get a good view of the breakers in the back. And the white caps, that's why the skipper had to be really cautious, because the Zodiac was really getting bounced around. And when we were in it, he asked us to get under a tarp. And the reason for that is water cascading over the bow. And otherwise, you'd come off the boat completely soaked. So we'd all kind of get under this tarp. You can see some of the birds. Always around, always screaming, always, but never aggressive and never a problem. So that's Alan. And so the French Navy put this sign up, I think it says 1992 or something like that. And since it's a French possession, I guess that's the way they claimed it. whatever the story is, that sign is still there. So we had 7 Elecraft K3s. Our friends at the Elecraft Corporation loaned us 6 complete K-Series, K3, KPA 500 amplifiers, and P3 scopes. We had 2 of the brand new SPE 1.3 kilowatt amplifiers that weigh a grand total of 26 pounds each. Fantastic D-Expedition amplifiers. The generators and of course, the fuel drums. DX Engineering donated about $4,000 worth of equipment. Just gave it to us. They sent us an email. They said, "What do you need?" We sent them a list. They shipped everything to San Jose, California, no charge. Got to support those guys. I mean, DX Engineering, Elecraft, Step IR loaned us antennas, N6BT, Tom Schiller supplied the vertical antennas. A lot of people don't realize how much corporate help we get. Otherwise, we couldn't afford to do this. This is pretty pricey, putting on something like this. So this is the antenna lineup. We had an inverted L on 160. And the wind was blowing so strong for so many days, we couldn't get the 160 antenna up until the last day. And we had a Battle Creek special, but it just couldn't get it up. It was just too windy, too dangerous. So we hacked together a 160 inverted L. But everything else worked fairly well. One of the big problems you have when you're on an island like this is you're so close to the sea. You have salt water constantly blowing on your antennas. And at night, you get these little salt tracks down the insulators. And they would arc over, and you can see them arcing. So every morning we'd be out there with a bucket of fresh water, washing down the antennas. It's really interesting. on Mellish Reef one night, we were in an unbelievable rainstorm, and when one of the guys noticed arcing in the sky, lights. He said, "What the heck is that?" It turned out that some of the antennas, they were wire antennas, they got a little too close to one another, and the antennas were arcing, the wires were arcing, and that's what they were seeing. We thought Martians had landed or something. Okay, now we had some problems on that island, and the biggest problem was the K-index was 4 or higher throughout the operation. And 4 is, on the edge, but when it was 5 and 6, propagation really was in pretty bad shape. And then on one day, the A index was 77, and we didn't believe it. We had to download the propagation report from one of the pilots that we had, and they said it's got to be a mistake. Nobody's ever seen an A index of 77, but it was, and we could tell by the propagation was so poor. We also have in the South Pacific, you have a lot of problems with over-the-horizon radars being run by several countries, including China, and they completely wipe out portions of the band. So you might as well just turn the radio off on remember the Russian woodpecker? This is the new version of the Russian woodpecker. It's a high-tech version. And they're pretty prevalent in the Pacific. So that's what the propagation looked like while we were there. And this is the K index. And it really caused us some problems. And you guys were hearing us a lot better than we were hearing you. Everybody was the same signal strength.
I'm not sure about that. I didn't hear you at all.
Well, everybody's 599, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of stations that absolutely came right over everything. One of my friends from Colorado he broke a Japanese pile. Wayne, what are you running? I know when he was running. Now, this photo was taken on the last day. We never could get the flags put up because the wind was just so brutal. Whatever we put them up on would have blown over. So we had to put the flags up. So we strung a line between 2 of the tents, and that's what you see here, just for a photo effect. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a D-Expedition if you didn't have the flags of the sponsoring countries. So it was New Caledonia, France, United States, Budapest, Hungary, and Allison insisted a New Zealand flag. So I knew this from the last trip. So I bought a New Zealand flag just for Allison. Okay, now let's see if I do this right, and if I have this thing set up properly, which may or may not be the case. Let's see if this is going to work. There it is. Hear that? That's what it sounded like inside the sleeping tent. 24 hours a day. You think you were sleeping? I tried, it doesn't work. Okay, so that's one. Not only does the sound make you crazy, but if your bunk happens to be laying alongside the canvas, you're getting banged on. Because you can never tension these things up to where the walls don't do this. And the radio desks were constantly you had to be careful the radio desk didn't tip over on you.
What did you do? You just had to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Say, Mom, I want to go home?
How many hours did it take before you finally could get to sleep?
You never, this is the first expedition where I had a problem because I couldn't get solid sleep. And after about 3 or 4 days, you really get disoriented.
Oh, yeah.
And I just said one day, I'm going back to the boat. I can't do this. I need sleep. And that's what we wound up doing.
Yeah.
And fortunately or unfortunately, you used the word, because of propagation, there were a lot of holes that we couldn't operate. So we went back to the boat, tried to get some sleep.
Beer.
So this is another one, if I do it right.
You get tired enough, you just fall asleep.
This is the ocean side. So the wind always came from the ocean side. And this was the sideband tent. You get the picture. Now, the tents we bought in New Zealand, they were canvas polyester with steel frames. On Mellish Reef, we had a couple of canvas tents, but we had 3 nylon tents. The nylon tents didn't last a couple of days, when they were just ripped apart by the wind. So on this one, I said, I'm going to find tents that are going to withstand the beating in case we had similar problems on Chesterfield, and we did. We had no rain infiltration, and the tents withheld the weather. In fact, I got a couple of emails after the expedition, people asking me, tell me the composition of your tents, and where did you get them? They're called Duxton Freedom, and we got them from a guy in New Zealand called equipoutdoors.co.nz. The list price on it was $1,700 a piece, and I just happened to hit it when he was trying to clear the warehouse out, and he gave them to me for $800 a piece. So it was like, wow, it's good stuff. We uploaded the logs daily, except for one day when we were just too busy dealing with the wind. That's a satellite phone. It's a satellite data terminal. You just point it towards the equator, flip it on, and it acts just like a modem, just like an internet modem. It's expensive. It's $7 a megabyte, up and down. So you have to manage your uploads. And we wrote our own software, and we were able to compress the daily logs down to about, I think it was 300K. So you can upload 300K on this thing in about 4 seconds. And that kept our data transfer cost very low. But we uploaded every day. One of the interesting things about the expedition, now that we have the internet, is during the expedition, people who have no clue what's going on in that island put out messages. And one of the messages we saw when we got home was, they lost the logs, or the logs were wrong, or they screwed up 17-meter log, and We didn't lose any logs. We didn't lose any QSOs. We didn't have a 17-meter log. We had 7 interconnected computers networked together. The log was replicated on every computer, so there was never a chance of losing a log because each computer had a complete copy of the log. I had the log on my laptop. So that was just some of the rumors that start are absolutely crazy. We did have one problem. The first 850 QSOs were logged as PSK31. We don't know why. We think it was a bug in software, but we never did understand why that happened. Well, we had a couple of database experts who worked for Hewlett Packard on the island, and they went in and fixed the database. Oops, come on, there we go. Okay, so we operated for 10 and a half days. We're on the island for 12 days. We operated for 10 and a half days. And we made just over 50,000 Qs, which was 30,000 less than we wanted to make. Our target was 80,000, but because of the propagation, we settled for 50,000. WA60 Mike Shapiro made 7,000 of those 50. The CW machine. But just over 14,000 uniques and a lot of dupes. We wound up with almost 5% of duplicate contacts, which is probably a little high. It should have been about 3%, but it is what it is. Okay, so we ran about 50% CW, almost 40% sideband, and 10% ready. And these numbers are, this is not an eye test, I can't even read it, but it gives you an idea of where we did most of the operating. We worked Europe, of course, Japan. We were so close to Japan, we can work them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Working JA was not a problem. And this breaks down the bands by mode. And continents. We had one contact in Antarctica. We have no clue if that was real or not, or somebody made a finger check when he keyed the call in. And quite frankly, I was too lazy to go and look for it. And then we did it by day. And you can see, if you put the propagation chart up against the days, you can see the number of contacts go down as the K index and the A index go up, which was very predictable. So this is the boat. This was the 3rd D expedition I've done on this boat. First one to Campbell Island in the Southern Ocean, the second one to Mellish Reef in the Coral Sea, and the third one to Chesterfield in the Coral Sea. And yesterday the Evohe landed on the Antipodes, south of New Zealand. It's now considered ZL9, so it's a new DXCC entity. Still, it counts as Campbell Island. There's 4 operators going to be on the island, 2 stations, going to be there for about 5 days. 1 linear amplifier, 2 vertical antennas.
Why didn't you leave him some gear?
Huh?
Why didn't you leave him some gear?
But they're on the Evohe. They went down on the Evohe. And I knew the skipper was going down. They go down to count penguins. But he didn't tell me he was going to have a couple of hens on board. So this is what it looks like on the boat. This is one of the cabins. There are 4 cabins for passengers. 2 of the cabins sleep 4. 2 of the cabins sleep 2. Is that right? Yeah. 4, whatever. But you can see there's no space to store anything. So you put your luggage on the bunk and you sleep with your luggage. That was my suitcase. That's my bunk. That's the second trip I've done on this bunk. The first trip I did up there was the biggest mistake of my life. Try to get out of an upper bunk when the boat's rolling. It's like really bad. So this time I insisted I'm getting a lower bunk. And I just slept with this bag, and that's my briefcase, stuffed it in a little storage space. That's another shot of the forward cabin. That's my bag. So you can see there's not very much room. This boat is not built for comfort. He charged us $95,000 for the entire thing. which is really cheap. If you know what the Braveheart cost, the Braveheart cost about $9,000 a day, and this guy is in the range of about $4,500 a day. So one of the characteristics of these de-expeditions is you have a budget, you run it like a business, and you kind of have to figure out what this thing is going to cost you every day and how much each of the operators has to put in. We each put in $12,000 of our personal money to get this project started, and then we pay our own transportation in New Zealand, New Caledonia. So when it's all over, you're in for about $16,000 to $18,000, depending on whether you like to fly business class or in economy for the rest. I fly business. I can't do the economy anymore. So they're not cheap. They're really fairly expensive projects. The guy's going to Heard Island in March. I was invited to that project, and I decided I didn't need to spend that much time at sea. They're putting in $20,000 each, plus travel. They're leaving from Cape Town, and they're going to be dropped off in Fremantle, Australia. So think about travel to Cape Town and travel from Fremantle. Just the time involved is interesting. But they'll be probably in for $25,000 to $26,000 each before this is all over. Okay, typical marine toilet, 2 of them for passengers. Do your business and pump the handle to empty the product, as they say. Skipper always had the galley open. You could go in the galley anytime you wanted, day or night. He allowed you to do that. No restrictions on what you could take. You'll notice the galley is very, very narrow. Some people think that's a negative. I happen to think it's a positive, because when you're walking through the galley and the boat's rolling, you can stick yourself on the wall, hold your plate. You have to have some degree of agility on these things, otherwise you couldn't even get into your bunk. You'd have great difficulty. We had a meeting place after the wheelhouse. The skipper allowed anybody in the wheelhouse any time of the day or night. So you could go in there, you could watch the radar, you could watch the navigation systems, you can keep the watch. Somebody's on watch all the time, you can keep them company. Okay? On the way back from the island, on the way back from Chesterfield to New Caledonia, the weather was terrible. The weather was miserable. The seas were rough. People were getting sick. I wasn't feeling very well. I hit the bunk and fell asleep as soon as we got off the island, and I forgot to take my Phenergan, which is a motion sickness medication. I woke up about 10 hours later, sick as a dog. So I asked Steve to call Arnie. Arnie, give me a double shot of Phenergan. So he takes out his trusty injection, turns me over, and about 10 hours later, I was fine. It was amazing. Better living through chemistry. It was so rough on the way back. The skipper pulled into a little harbor and dropped anchor, got into Zodiac, and went across to talk to the harbor master. And he came back and he said, I give you a choice. You can ride with me back to Noumea, or the harbor master will get you on a bus. Bus. It was about a 6-hour bus ride from Kumak to Noumea. Beautiful country, beautiful infrastructure, beautiful highway, and an air-conditioned bus. What more could you ask for, you know? So I took the bus. The boat took another day to get back. Actually, it took probably a little over a day. They got back the next day. We got back on October 15. The boat got in on October 16. Arnie took the boat. I thought he was crazy, but he said, I want to do this. So he braved this weather along the island coast. The major sponsors, the Northern California DX Foundation, gave us a pile of cash to help with this. Telecraft, all the radios, DX Engineering, coax, and masts, and tools, and everything else we asked for. We had over 600 individual donors, and I don't remember what the number of clubs were. I think it was 53 clubs. I don't have all the numbers worked out yet, but it's going to come out to about $150,000 to do this project. Each of the operators put up $12,000. When I close the books, each operator will get back about $5,000. So they're in for $7,000 cash and whatever their travel expenses were to New Zealand, New Caledonia. But there were 53 clubs around the world that donated money. And these are the corporate. You guys know Radio Sport headsets? Fantastic headsets, absolutely fantastic. You put those headsets on, and you'll hear no wind noise. And if you're in a multi with other operators and sideband, you won't hear them. These headphones they gave us. I think they loaned us 7 of them. So we had 7 Radio Sport headsets. These new expert amplifiers, you get a kilowatt out with about 5 watts in it if you're not careful. It's phenomenal amplifier. Okay, and we used bandpass filters on older radios. So we had to remember to change the bandpass filter when you change the band. Otherwise, you couldn't hear anything. And you'd say the band is dead. There's no, you got the wrong filter. Well, of course, there's our friends from the Evohe, and these were these partners that helped us in various tasks. Remy lives in Noumea, and Remy helped us get the license because none of us spoke French good enough to deal with the government, but he does, and he helped us get the license. And that's the off-island pilots. We had pilots from all the geographies giving us input, sending us emails over the satellite. And I'm the QSL manager. And I don't know if you guys know Tim in the UK, M0URX. He's one of the best QSL managers in the mailing. Tim works for the Royal Mail. So he gets a really good bulk mail discount. And he's printing the labels, stuffing the cards, putting the labels on the cards on the envelopes, and taking them to the Royal Mail with using his discount. So that's worked out pretty well for us. We, of course, thank everybody who donated to us. The big guys were the United States, the foundations, of course, the Northern Cal and Indexa, and then a couple of these guys. We had a lot of nice support from the Europeans. A lot of times the European clubs, the people in the United States have a different culture. We are a donating culture. We donate. In Europe, it's a different culture. They donate to their club. And the club donates to the DXpeditions. And a lot of people don't realize that. But we got some good support from across Europe. So thanks for your time. If you have any questions, this was a shot from the boat.
One question. How long from the time you first put one foot on the island until your first actual on-the-air contact, whether it was a valid for your...
It was from the moment you set foot on the island, you have to get the tents going, you have to get the generators going, you got to get some antennas up, you got to run coax, you got to put the radios together. A day.
It was a day.
It was about a day to get everything set up, and then another half day to finish the setup. On the last day, we took everything down in 6 hours.
Well, take it down for
6 hours.
Did you have any problems with customs?
No.
All this electronic gear and then having like the equivalent of the TSA.
What a question.
About this.
You know what an ATA carnet is? You ever hear the word ATA carnet? It's a merchandise passport. It is accepted in 80 countries, and it gets you through customs. Yeah, every piece of equipment is listed on the carnet. It's certified. We paid a bond. I think the bond for the carnet was about $600. And that guarantees the equipment will be removed from the country. Okay, so we shipped everything under carnet. There's one here, yeah.
How'd you figure out where to land?
That's another good question. We knew where some of the previous DXpeditions landed, but the skipper makes that decision. Once he gets there, he'll go out in the Zodiac, kind of look around, and he makes the decision, not us. because it's a safety issue. Can he get up on the beach? Could he get the boat up? Could he get the boat off? The Zodiac and all this nonsense that I don't understand. Yeah.
Your 14-day window of validity on time for your license?
Yeah.
What determined when that started? Was it you picking the date, or was that fixed on the calendar?
We told them when we wanted to be there, and they gave us the beginning and the end, a 90-day period. Any 14 days in that 90-day period.
So you could show up on the island and say, this is day one?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do they have to be consecutive?
Well, you could do it, not me, pal. No, I don't know. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get your container back to the States?
It's not back yet.
Not back yet.
No,
That
no.
was October, right?
Yeah, we turned the equipment, let's see. I went over to the customs broker on October the 27th and made arrangements. I told him I wanted the stuff back here the end of November. Well, he missed that date. He owes me an answer this week. It's being flown back.
Oh, really? The container's being flown?
We didn't use a container.
Oh, you did?
No, we put everything on pallets.
Oh, okay.
Everything is lashed to pallets. But I'll tell you this, the cost of bringing the equipment back was half the cost of going there.
Of course, coming back, it wasn't a guaranteed time.
You know, I'm just the treasurer. And the planner. And the publicity guy. Yeah.
What's the highest elevation of Mount Chesterfield?
Probably a meter and a half above sea level.
At high
tide, yeah.
Wow.
I don't have them somewhere.
Why did you turn the GPS off the Evohe from New Caledonia?
Because the guy who was, it wasn't a GPS, it was a
transponder.
Wasn't a transponder. It was an A-class transponder. It only puts out 2 watts. So it's a coastal transponder. Once you get out to sea, the bearings had to be emailed to a server. And the guy who was putting in the coordinates was putting them in wrong. And they didn't realize it. We haven't told anybody that, but that's what the problem was.
Because we could look at,
I know.
from New Zealand
You
to
could,
Noumea.
yeah. They were just putting them in wrong. Anything else? I'm between.
Where you
and
going
sleep.
next? Good job.
Thank you very much. That was, for those of us who chase DX, that's sort of a close exposition of what it's all about. Very enjoyable. With that, folks, thanks for being here tonight, and we will see you a month from tonight, and have another session. 7:30.